Hello, hello, good morning, and welcome back for another episode of Sit Down Stand Up, where sometimes we get the name of the show right, sometimes we don't. Anyway, I'm here with my mighty mug of marketing, and we are going to just jump into this. I do apologize. I took an unofficial sabbatical, or unintended sabbatical. I'm not even entirely sure what that word means. I think it just means to, like, take a break from your work, which sounds like a vacation, but I think it's taking a break from everything in life, right? I don't know. Who cares, really? Bottom line, I wasn't making videos all week, and here I am on Friday making one. So thank you so much for joining me here. I had the epiphany last episode about that I can still talk about certain things. We can talk about things that are unique to us or maybe counterculture or what have you, but it's important to lay a foundation first in order to get people to know, allow people to get to know you for who you are, to feel safe with you. I know that's kind of one of those weird words these days that has come to mean something that it shouldn't. You know, it's a bastardized word. There's a lot of bastardized words out there, but safe is one of them. Whereas it came to mean like just insulated, which is we can't exist insulated. There is no insulation from life. So. And if at any point you do feel insulated from life, it's a disservice. It really is. You're just prepping yourself for all kinds of horrors and difficulties in life, because that's not how life is. But you want to feel like this person, because we don't know. You don't know who's getting up in front and talking to you, who's doing the comedy. You don't know where it's like you don't know where the food's been. You don't know who's bringing you this comedy. And I don't know why my voice is high pitched and scratchy. It's supposed to sound very deep and masculine. It's 8:00. So maybe that's it. It's too late for me to have a deep voice. I've got to sound shrill and squeaky. It's all good. But the bottom line is, you want to know that whoever's giving you your comedy, they've got their head in the right place, because comedians can say some really awful things. And the bummers, I can't go into all of it or any of it really, because one, it's not my style. And two, I don't even think it would be allowed on YouTube, or it would be struck, or, things happen. But like, people could say some very egregious things, but if you know that they're cool, that the person's cool, especially if we're talking about comedy, it gives them that credibility where you're not taking them seriously. You're seeing the joke, because there was something happened recently. I'm not going to say what it is. Again, we don't need to get in the nitty gritty, but somebody said, oh, you need to, okay, so what I said may have sounded horrible. It sounded like I said, I want you to go, this person should be killed or whatever, but you got to know the context. And then she proceeded to explain the context, and the context didn't make it any better. It actually made it worse, because it was really getting to her into the psychology of it. And you're like, okay, no, that's actually just all bad. There's no good there. But this person has never presented herself in a way that makes you feel safe. Like, the things she says makes you, okay, she's trying to push an ideology. She's trying to push an agenda. She wants you to believe what she believes. And so it's really hard to sell a joke that you're joking about something when you've made it clear that you want people to see things the way you do. In other words, it's not a safe thing. This person is saying the joke. They're saying these things, but it's to convince you of something. It's to change your mind about something, which is why she's also not terribly funny, because comedy has to be for its own sake. Now people, comedy is art. We got to be holding up a mirror to ourselves. It's what happens when you do comedy right. It can make you think. It can bring up discussions and go, okay, well, that's kind of ridiculous. But really, let's face it, a lot of observational comedy falls flat if you just use logic. Like, if you're like, well, actually that is why they say that, because the most of the ingredients are this, or like a lot of the observational stuff works because logically or on the face of it, it does sound absurd. But, truth is stranger than fiction. So all you have to do is actually research what it is they're talking about. Why is this or this? Oh, it's because of these things, or it's because of this. There's plenty of excuses, or not excuses, but reasons, mechanisms for why things are the way they are, but they seem absurd to us as human beings. They can seem absurd to us. And there are explanations, but usually physics is kind of a downer, or the sciences in that way. It's like they can explain some very bizarre things that people believe, but that are actually very true, but they're counterintuitive, I guess is my point. So it's not always about like, it's funny because it's true, because we all think that way, or we have had those thoughts, but usually there is an explanation. And sometimes you know what it is, and sometimes you don't. But either way, you're like, okay, as absurd as this is, as absurd it is to have this observation, there is a reason for it. Or, I mean, a lot of times it's just a shared experience, or a lot of people shared experience. I don't seem to have a lot of those experiences. I've been trying, my gosh, for the longest time, I never flew, not out of any kind of phobia or anything. I was not in a place where it had a need to fly anywhere. That was pretty much up through, I would say, my mid to late 20s. It wasn't until I moved to Colorado, got my feet planted there, got my life kind of back on track in a lot of ways, and had friends that had reasons to travel. They're like, hey, could you we're doing something down in Florida, so okay, I'd fly down to Florida. Hey, we're doing something over here. So I could afford it, and there was an opportunity to do it. I wasn't just flying just for the heck of it, like, wee, I'm flying in a plane. But I remember thinking, okay, this is going to be great because now I'm going to have all kinds of material, because all these comedians that when they go through TSA or that, well, I mean, TSA isn't really funny. I mean, it can be, but the real tragedy is I don't think I ever flew. I think I flew once when I was like 9 or 10 years old. Barely remember it. I don't know what the reason was for it. But really, most of my flying has happened after 9/11, after TSA did its thing. So I really want. The good thing is I don't know what I'm missing out on. I don't know how awesome it was to just walk into a like as it was a bus station or a bus stop or something. You just walk in, you pay for your ticket, and you could leave if you wanted to. You could come back in. Your friends and family could go in and hang out with you if they wanted to, and then leave again. It was a magic. It was like Disneyland. Apparently, the airport used to be like Disneyland. It was a wonderful place, a magical place. And then TSA came in and all these restrictions, and now it's like a pain in the butt. And you've got all these kinds of things. There was a flight or a situation where I ended up having to spend the night at the airport. It was not a good time. Duh. I mean, that's kind of obvious. But I found out what gate my plane for the next day was leaving from. And so instead of, just like, I don't know, sleeping wherever, I specifically slept across from where my gate was going to be in the morning, because it was like a 6 a.m. flight. It was like a really early flight, or 7 a.m. or something. So it sucked, but it was like, well, hey, at least when I wake up, if I sleep at all, when I wake up, I will already be ready to go. I got kicked out. They kicked me out of the airport. Now, and you may say, well, of course they would. That's a safety thing. I don't know. It was incredibly frustrating, because I was actually kind of comfortable, as comfortable as you can be on the floor of an airport, because I can't sit in the seats. I don't like having like one side. I like to spread out a little bit. Even though when I'm laying down, most of the time I'm not splayed. I'm not like, spread eagle laying down and going, oh yes, enjoy the ground. But it's like just having that side of the seat there, and the seats dip. Like they're not designed for maximum comfort, especially for sleeping, which is understandable. And there's even places like they put obstacles, or they put little crappy little nubby metal things just to prevent like homeless people from sleeping on them, like for being like comfortable or an ideal place for folks to sleep. But so bottom line is, it's not great to sleep on the seats. I don't know. They do it in the movies. And so I tried it because I figured, there was a brief time in my life where I was naive enough to think that the movies in any way, shape, or form reflected reality, which, there was a lot of frustration from my childhood of going, Mom, why don't I have my own phone line in my room? Why don't I have a TV in my room? Why don't I have all these things in my bedroom? Why can't I just go on a bus by myself and ride across the country? Like, there were so many movies. Hollywood had this really bizarre way, because I've talked to other people since, and nobody lives like that. Even in California, people didn't live like that, but they showed this idealized, like, kids, like the Wizard or the Wiz. I think there's a difference, but the one that was essentially a Mario 3 commercial or Nintendo commercial. But it shows these kids just getting on buses and public transit. They've got a little bit of money, and they've got this full autonomy. They're making decisions, doing whatever. You got, the Home Alone thing. Obviously that's a bit of an outlier in terms of the situation, but like this idea of little kids living like adults. And how many shows and movies from back in the 80s and 90s had the guy and the gal talking in their rooms on their own phone lines? Like, I couldn't talk for like an hour on the, because it's a family phone, and it was tethered to the kitchen. It was mounted on the wall, and yes, it had a very long cord, so you could go into the living room, because we had a townhouse, and it was very, very not a lot of gap between the kitchen, living room, and dining room, so you could essentially peruse that entire area while still on the phone, but you had to lift up the cord to let people under and all that kind of stuff. But like, I couldn't go to my room with it, obviously. And it wasn't like the greatest place to be, because you could sit down technically if you pull the chair up next to it, but it wasn't a comfortable experience. And you're not going to have any like, ooh, it's just my girlfriend type conversations in the kitchen where everybody, is in the middle, kind of in the middle of the house where people are going to be crossing through and everything. There's no privacy there, in other words, or very little. So you can't just be like, hey, everybody clear out of this place in the house. I'm having a phone call. So there were reasons why you couldn't go up there. Now, granted, cordless phones came out not too long. We did eventually get one. It was quite some time after their inception, but you could have that effect. But there was still one line for the house, and before call waiting, before voice messaging or answering machines and everything, you could miss a call if somebody else was on the phone, because there was no way to know. The other person got a busy signal. You didn't know that they were trying to call you. So if anybody else in the family was expecting a call, and if it was anything important, you could get on the phone, but you had to be very quick about it. It was like, okay, get on and get off. Like, hey man, do you want to hang out tomorrow? Or can my mom drop me off at your place, or can your mom take you here? Like, trying to schedule play dates with your friends and stuff like that, or if it's a girl, like, hey, can I talk to you? Can we talk at like 10 o'clock or something, like at night? When nobody else is supposed to be calling. Like, you got to figure it out. You got to shotgun it and get it done really quick. Otherwise, you were possibly interfering with a phone call that needed to happen. And then if it was too long, then the person who's waiting the call, if they don't hear it in the next 20 minutes, and they're like, okay, I need to call that person back. It was a mess. It was very difficult. Life was hard, people. Life used to be very hard. In the 80s, it was like caveman type living situations. It was horrible. So before all that, but phone lines were expensive. Long distance was expensive. Like, you had to think about who you were calling, where they were calling from. Do you accept the charges, kind of stuff. Like, it was dicey. You could end up going broke if you called the wrong people in the wrong part of the world or the wrong part of the country, because it wasn't just outside of the country was long distance. Like, different time zones. I don't remember what the qualifier was. I knew 1-800 was good because it was whoever you were calling accepted the charges automatically. Like, it was usually like a business thing. But I think 900 numbers, very close to 800, only one digit off, and the 9 doesn't look doesn't look completely unlike an 8. Those weren't good. So you can see a 1-900 number. Well, you found out the hard way when you got the phone bill how they weren't accepting the charges. They weren't paying for it. You were. So it was a very, very, very scary time. My point is, a lot of people, I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of people did not have either A, the need, or B, the money to have a secondary phone line and a secondary phone in their kid's room. And I don't know, maybe there were some, but nobody I knew, even kids that lived in the bigger houses, the nicer houses, none of them had their own phone line. And I guess maybe if you're Hollywood wealthy, if you're living, in the $1 million houses and everything, and money is no obstacle, and you're doing your thing, kids are doing whatever they're doing. Oh yeah, maybe you have 3 or 4 phone lines, who knows? But I don't think it was feasible or affordable for a lot of folks to do that. But yet, in almost every coming of age movie, every teen movie in Hollywood, the kids always, you see their bedroom, it's much, much bigger than mine. Now, granted, I lived in a townhouse. It was a 9x9 space. So pretty much anybody had a bigger bedroom than I did. Although my sister didn't. There was a smaller room. There's always a smaller room. But it wasn't the size of the room. It was usually what was in it. They'd have TVs. They'd have VCRs. They'd have video game systems. Now, I did later on, when I was like 13 or 14, I finally got an old Zenith faux wood plastic 13-inch TV. We'd had it for a long time, but it was never allowed to be in my bedroom. It was like in the kitchen or wherever else. Finally, it had no real home, and I was playing video games. I had a Super Nintendo at that point. My dad didn't want to share the big screen TV in the basement with me, so I was able to have this little TV up in my room. Didn't have cable, didn't have VCR, nothing there. It was just literally that and my Super Nintendo. It was a gaming monitor, effectively. So I did eventually get that. But again, I was much, much older, and it was a matter of function. It wasn't just, I'm going to watch TV upstairs. It was one parent going, hey, I mean, back then, a 34-inch TV, I think that was 34. That was like the biggest like non-projection TV, because back in the day, projection TVs were not good. They're not great now. I mean, projectors are much better now than they used to be. But you remember the old school like projection TVs where they had like the guns, it was like the red, blue, and green gun. They had to be calibrated. If they weren't, you would start to see little bits of like red or green bleeding over. You had to be like sitting directly in front of it, and if you're off to the side, you like literally half the picture wasn't there. Well, not literally, but a good chunk of the picture wasn't there. Again, we're talking barbaric times, people. Times were hard back in the 80s and 90s even, but they were projection. The picture was not great, is my point. If you sat back far enough, it didn't look bad, but that's true of just about anything. Everything looks pretty clear when it's super far away, unless your eyes are messed up. But at the same time, that kind of takes away the point, because if I hold my phone up to my face right here, I mean, it's the same amount of viewing like area that I would if I was watching a big screen TV. It's, if you put it close enough, it's a big enough image where you're like, oh, I got to actually move my head just to see it. Now, not a phone, because you know what I'm saying? It loses a lot of the gravitas if you're sitting in a room and the room is big enough that you can see the projection TV very well, but then the TV is so small, it might as well be a 27 inch. It might as well be, a 20-inch TV, because it's far enough away that it looks just tiny. It's no big deal. So anyway, projection TVs, I was never a big fan of them, but when my dad bought I think it was a 34 inch. So like it was a 4x3, big giant. I think weighed like 300 and some pounds. It was a beast to get downstairs. It was a monstrosity. It really was. And then it had to get repaired. And it was funny because my dad, it came with, it was a whole setup. It had the giant floor speakers, that tower speakers, like almost as tall as I was. It came to like my shoulders, and it had all the amps, and it had the double tape player. It had the 6-disc changer, like all that kind of stuff. Where you had back in the day, even up to 2004, we were selling component stereos. And I think, like major setups, major like home theaters still have a lot of that stuff, but obviously not the dual tape decks. It's all digital now. You don't really need, if you're going to listen to music, it's not going to be on a CD player. It's going to be just on a teeny little device or a thumb drive or something. So times have changed, but it was a whole big setup. So it had a pedestal. The TV had its own little pedestal, and you could, had little glass doors underneath that you could store stuff in. So when my dad had to take that to get to repair, not only did I get the pleasure of trying to help him up the stairs with the darn thing, but we had to replace it. We took my little 13-inch TV out of my room and had to put it on this giant pedestal. So you got this massive, amazing setup, the giant speakers, surround sound, the giant pedestal to hold the altar to entertainment, and it's a little 13-inch TV, just kind of sit right there. Very, very underwhelming. Very, very sad, really. But luckily, it was only for like a week. We survived. But where did I get off on that? Oh, that to say, big screen TV. Oh, so my dad wanted to watch what he wanted to watch on it. It makes sense, right? He paid some of his hard-earned money to have this nice entertainment center in the basement where he spent a lot of his time, and he wanted to watch what he wanted to watch on it. And so, but it was like, but you can't, you buy a game system for your kid, and then you're like, well, when is he going to play it? Because now I could, there was like an hour, so I would get home at like 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon, and my dad didn't get home till 5:30, but I had to do my homework first. I tried to do my homework on the bus. More often than not, I was able to get my homework done on the bus ride home. As soon as we got on the bus, because usually you get on the bus, if you get out there early enough, you're just kind of sitting there waiting. So a lot of kids would wait, just kind of hang out, and before they got on the buses, because like who wants to just sit on a bus for 5 minutes? But I got on the bus first just so that I could get the seat that I wanted. I could sit down and I would start doing my homework. So my homework usually looked like crap. Luckily, there was no penmanship or handwriting class, because I would have failed it. It looked horrible, but I was able to get math done. I got social studies done. Sometimes I needed to. There were some days where the homework did manage to last beyond my bus ride home. And those were grim days, because if I couldn't get it done in 30 to 40 minutes, it was a loaded day for homework. So most of my time I spent on that bus ride, got the homework done. But the homework had to be done and chores had to be done before I could go outside and play. And I say that because I say go outside and play because for the most part, my childhood was going outside. You could play with Legos and, figures and stuff like that. But usually, especially when we get to junior high, like 5th grade up through like almost 9th grade, there were like 4 years where it was just playing football with friends, not organized football, but just going out playing football, soccer, basketball. Like those were the golden years of getting outside and playing sports. Because you knew what you were doing. I mean, before 5th grade, it's kind of like, you're doing the thing, but you're not really. You're on the field, but it's not the most engaging of things. You're still figuring stuff out. But as soon as you start getting into middle school, and there are school teams for you to be a part of, it gets a little more real, So anyway, oh gosh, I've gone off on so many tangents. I'm not sure where I was coming from, but just. The only reason why I had the TV in my room was because my dad wanted to watch what he was going to watch. And even though there was a sliver of time at various points where I could have, there was, getting outside to play before the sun went down, got to get homework and chores done before I could do that. So by the time he got home, usually I was done doing all the stuff that I wanted to do or needed to do outside or elsewhere, especially in the wintertime. I got to be in by like 5:30. So then there's conflict. Well, I have this game system and I want to play for an hour. I was allowed to play for like 5 hours a week, I think, or 6 hours a week, like an hour a day, essentially. For a while, that was a limit because I went hog wild on Mario Brothers on the Christmas that I got it, which was also, I think, the first year we had that big screen TV. So I'm just sitting down there for 8 hours, just like dying in World 8-1 because of that stupid jump. There's a gap like this, and there's just little things for you to stand on, and then there's another gap. And back then, I used to jump with the controller. Like every time Mario jumped, my hands would jump. So between the physicality difficulty of it and the actual difficulty of the jump for a child age kid, for a young kid, I wasted so many lives on that and just kept going and trying to beat that. I finally beat it, and then I got to 8-2, and then I died there. Most of you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, so I'm not going to go into any more detail in it, but just know that it was a very grindy progression, and because it was old school Nintendo, unless you were able to pull off the trick that gave you infinite lives, the real difficulty came in that you had a finite amount of lives, and if you lost them, the game was over and you went back to the start of the game, or it might have been to the start of 8-1. The level that I just, spent like 2 hours trying to beat. I finally beat it. I get to 8-2. 8-2 is even harder than 8-1 because, of course, it is. And if I lose the lives there, then I got to go back to 8-1. It was a mess. It was a mess. Bottom line, but I would say it would be borderline cruelty. Borderline cruelty to give your kid a Super Nintendo, a gaming system of any kind, really, and also to have a big screen TV and never get to play it. So it was a concession. I didn't get to play on the big screen TV for very long. It was maybe, I think, the first year and a half or something. But by the time Donkey Kong Country 2 came out, I think that was 94 or 95. No, I think it had to be 93. I don't know. When that game came out, that was one of the first games that I remember playing in my room. Actually, no. The Super Nintendo in general. I don't think I ever played the Super Nintendo on the big screen TV. Or I did. It was very, very brief. It's very important for me to get these details right, folks, because I know you're tracking with me. You care. No, yeah, it was because I remember I played Empire Strikes Back and Mario All-Stars. I remember playing that. I had a friend come over and we played that on the 13-inch TV. Yes, my room, it was barely enough, but we were able to fit 2 people in my bedroom. It was incredibly small, but yeah. So but I do remember playing Mega Man X on the big screen TV for a short time. So I think it was that Christmas. Maybe it was like 2 months. There were like 2 months after I got the Super Nintendo that I was playing on the big screen TV, and then I don't know. My timeline's all screwed up. I'm trying to work things out, but it doesn't work when you're late to the party with a lot of stuff. Bottom line was, that's why I had a 13-inch TV in my room. There we go. Moral of the story. But I didn't have a VCR. I did finally get a shelf system, which was it's kind of like a stereo, but it was technically portable, but and the speakers attached, but they disattach. You could unattach them. And it was only had 1 tape deck, not 2. So it wasn't like top of the line, but it was a nice Sony. It lasted me a long time. It was a good little system. So I did have one of those in my room. I could only play it so loud though, because I shared a wall with my parents' bedroom, my closet ended up being their bathroom. They renovated, which was good. We needed that. When it was me, my sister, parents, you got 2 adults, 2 kids sharing one bathroom. That was pretty rough. So my parents decided to expand. They moved their closet. They renovated a certain part of their bedroom to make that their closet, and they made what was their closet, they opened it up to be the bathroom. Unfortunately, though, for it to actually be a functioning full bath, it meant they had to extend it into my room, which took away about 3/4 of my closet space. So they relocated their closet. I lost like half of my real estate. It sucked, but it was for the greater good. It made things a lot easier. Me and my sister could use the main bathroom, and then my parents had their own bathroom that they could use. And so it worked out. But, and I didn't need all that closet space. I was not awash with clothes, or I didn't use a lot of it for storage. So, but I mean, it does stink when you have a small room, but you actually have a decent enough closet space. You can actually, do stuff with, or I could actually make like a little fort in there or what have you. It was kind of that. It was a good sized closet for a kid. And now I lost that real estate too. But I was getting up in age at that point. Wasn't playing forts in there. Blankets and pillow forts were where it's at, and you really couldn't fit those in the closet. So, anywho, closet space had the shelf unit. Oh yeah, so I shared a wall with my parents' bathroom. So, and if they left that door open on their end, it was kind of like the music would just go through. So I had to play the music I couldn't rock it. I had a certain magical place on the dial where I knew I could turn it up that much and I wouldn't get any pushback. But if my parents were upstairs, or if it was, after, 8 o'clock at night or something, I had to keep it low. Anyway, so I had some things, but my point is Hollywood made it seem like all these kids had all these, if you were a kid, you were supposed to have your own phone line, you were supposed to have your own TV, all these different things because everybody else did. And if you were a kid, you just had $20 to buy yourself a bus fare. You could take that anywhere you wanted to go. You could do the Ferris Bueller day off. It made it look like, especially for a kid. Now, as an adult, you may look at that and go, this is absurd, but it didn't seem like they did. They were just kind of like, oh, it's a cool movie. And I guess it is, but it's like, I watch it now and I'm like, no, you couldn't just skip class. I mean, I guess you could, but if you had a stay-at-home mom, you couldn't skip class because she was on top of things. She knew what was going on, and there was not a lot of leeway. And all it took was one of my teachers saying, "Okay, because they used to." I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have a kid that lived near you. If you were sick, if you were home sick for more than one day, if it was going to be a couple days, they would find a child who lived near you, who used the same bus stop that you did, and they would give them your textbook and your homework, your project assignments. I remember I had an ear infection and some nasty stuff. I was laid up for I think it was about a week, a full week, maybe a week and a couple days. So the first 2 days I was abjectly miserable, obviously, because that's when, the sickness is at its worst, but at its worst. But I didn't have any homework or anything to do because I couldn't go to school. So, no homework, no work. So, but I couldn't enjoy it. I was so miserable, I couldn't enjoy it. I remember distinctly not enjoying it. That was another time that I got the TV in my room, though. That 13-incher, there were times where it would migrate into my bedroom if I was sick. And they would bring up the VCR. They would find ways to make it happen so that the sickly kid had something to watch or to busy himself with. As I got older, when I was younger, book on tape, listen to music. I had a little recorder, but as I got older, they would allow special occasions for having the TV in my room. I remember that distinctly. So everything was, you felt the worst, but you actually could, in theory, enjoy the fact that you didn't have anything to do, and you had Jell-O to eat. You had Jell-O to eat. You were kind of living in the lap of luxury briefly with the TV in your room and Jell-O and pudding and, all that kind of stuff because, you were being catered to because you weren't feeling well. But unfortunately you felt so sick you couldn't appreciate it. But then as you got a little bit better, you were still good enough to go to school or to get out of bed. Your ears still hurt and everything. But now you got some kid get saddled with your homework. So it gets brought to you. So you actually have to start doing your schoolwork at home, which was it was the worst thing. Is I feel like crap already. And now you're going to pile on homework and projects. And I wasn't here for the lesson. I couldn't do my homework on the bus. So now I'm having to do homework in bed. It was a hard time, folks. It was barbaric times. These were hard times back in the 80s and 90s. You just don't know. You don't know how good you had it or how good you have it now. It was hell. It was hell. And those of us who survived and got out, we were forever changed. But anyway, I'll be happy to tell you more about that on the next episode. This is not exactly what I had thought that I was going to be talking about, but I'm happy that I did because it was a lot of fun to revisit. I will talk to you soon. Take care. Cheers.